The courthouse on 6th Street smelled like floor polish and desperation. I'd been here every other Wednesday for 6 months, watching my uncle's lawyer slowly dismantle my grandmother's memory. Courtroom 4C. Judge Ronald Hastings presiding, the same judge who'd looked at me like I was wasting his time since day one. Uncle Marcus sat at the plaintiff's table, looking respectable in his Brooks Brothers suit. His lawyer Richard Caldwell, senior partner at Caldwell and Associates, shuffled papers with the confidence of someone who'd never lost. I sat at the defendant's table with my court-appointed attorney, Janet Reeves. She was doing her best, but she was 26, and this was her third case ever. We were outmatched. The gallery was full. Uncle Marcus had made sure of that. Cousins, second cousins, family, friends all there to watch him prove that grandmother had been senile when she'd written her will, when she'd left everything to me, her youngest grandchild, and nothing to him. $4.7 million. That's what she'd left. Her house, her investments, her savings. 47 years of careful planning. All to me. Marquez wanted it thrown out. Claimed undue influence, diminished capacity, coercion. Said I'd manipulated grandmother in her final years. Isolated her, turned her against the family. It was month 6 of the trial. We were losing. Your Honor, Caldwell stood, voice smooth as silk. We'd like to call our final witness, Dr. Raymond Chun, neurologist, an expert witness. This was new. Dr. Chun took the stand, was sworn in, and settled into the chair with practiced ease. Dr. Chun, Caldwell began, you've reviewed the medical records of the deceased, Mrs. Margaret Patterson. I have. And what did you find? Mrs. Patterson had advanced dementia in her final 2 years. Her medical records show multiple diagnoses of cognitive decline, memory loss, and impaired judgment. My stomach dropped. In your professional opinion, would someone with this level of cognitive decline be capable of making sound decisions about a complex estate? No. Absolutely not. Caldwell smiled. Thank you, Doctor. Janet stood for cross-examination. She was nervous. I could see her hands shaking. Dr. Chun, when was Mrs. Patterson's will executed? He checked his notes. According to the records provided, 3 years before her death. And when was her dementia diagnosed? The formal diagnosis came 18 months before her death. So the will was executed a full 18 months before the dementia diagnosis. Dr. Chun hesitated. According to these records, yes. And yet you testified she had advanced dementia when the will was written. I testified based on the medical records I was provided, which showed the diagnosis came after the will was executed. Dementia can be present before diagnosis, but you have no evidence it was, do you? Caldwell stood. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Judge Hastings said. Move on, Ms. Reeves. Janet sat down. The damage was done. Judge Hastings looked at me over his reading glasses. Miss Patterson, I'm going to ask you directly. Do you have any evidence, any concrete evidence that your grandmother was of sound mind when she executed this will? I stood. Yes, Your Honor. Besides your own testimony, because frankly, your testimony is tainted by your obvious financial interest. Your Honor, Janet started, I'm talking to your client. He looked at me. Well, I have documents. What kind of documents? From my grandmother's military service. The courtroom went quiet. Military service, Judge Hastings frowned. What does that have to do with her testamentary capacity? Everything, Your Honor. Uncle Marcus leaned forward, whispering urgently to Caldwell. Your Honor. Caldwell stood. This is clearly a delaying tactic. The deceased's military service from 70 years ago has no bearing on her mental state 3 years ago. Ms. Patterson, Judge Hastings said, what are you talking about? I reached into my bag and pulled out a small wooden box. Polished, mahogany, brass, hinges, about the size of a book. My grandmother gave me this 2 weeks before she died. She told me if anyone ever questioned the will, I should show this to the judge. What is it? Her medal box? From her service in World War II, Uncle Marcus laughed. This is ridiculous! She was a nurse. She has a few commendation medals, so what? I opened the box. Inside, 3 medals lay on faded velvet, but underneath the velvet lining was a hidden compartment. I lifted the velvet. Underneath were documents, yellowed with age, but preserved carefully, stamped with classifications I'd only seen in movies. Your Honor, may I approach? He nodded. I walked to the bench and handed him the first document. His expression changed as he read. What is this? That's my grandmother's service record, her real service record. I pulled out the next document. This is her security clearance. Level, top secret, issued 1943. Never revoked. Judge Hastings stared at the paper. And this, I handed him a third document, is the operational file for what she actually did during the war. He read the header aloud. Operation Silent Bell. He looked up. What is Operation Silent Bell? It was a classified intelligence operation. My grandmother wasn't a nurse. She was an intelligence analyst. She worked on breaking Japanese naval codes. The courtroom erupted. Order! Judge Hastings banged his gavel. Order! Uncle Marcus was on his feet. This is absurd. She was a nurse. I knew my own mother. Did you? I turned to face him. Did you know she spoke fluent Japanese? Did you know she had a degree in mathematics from EM? Did you know she was recruited by the Office of Strategic Services in 1942? She never told you because it was classified. The operation wasn't declassified until 2015. She was legally prohibited from discussing it for 70 years. I turned back to Judge Hastings. The documents in that box include her commendation letters, her security clearance renewals, and proof that she maintained top secret clearance until she was 93 years old. Maintained. Judge Hastings looked at the papers. She renewed her clearance every 5 years. The last renewal was 3.5 years ago, 6 months before she executed the will that's being contested. I pulled out another document. This is a psychological evaluation from that clearance renewal, conducted by the Department of Defense. It includes cognitive testing, memory assessment, and judgment evaluation. Judge Hastings read it carefully. This says her cognitive function was exceptional for her age. Yes, Your Honor. Because she had to prove she was still mentally competent to maintain classified clearance. The government doesn't give top-secret clearance to people with dementia. Caldwell was on his feet. Your Honor, we had no notice of this evidence. Neither did I, Judge Hastings said sharply. Senora Patterson, why are we only seeing this now? Because my grandmother told me not to reveal it unless absolutely necessary. Even though the operation is declassified, she felt her specific role should remain private. She was proud of her service, but didn't want recognition. She just wanted to make sure no one could claim she was UNT in her right mind when she made her final decisions. I pulled out one more document. This is a letter from her commanding officer, written 3 years ago, shortly before she executed her will. Judge Hastings took it. Read it? His eyebrows rose. It's from a retired admiral, I said, confirming that my grandmother contacted him to verify her clearance status. He writes that he found her sharp as ever and more mentally acute than officers a third her age. The judge set down the letter, looked at Uncle Marcus. Mr. Patterson, did you know your mother had top secret clearance? Marcus's face was red. That's impossible. She was a nurse. She worked at the base hospital. As her cover? I said quietly. The nursing was her cover identity. Her real work was in the intelligence wing. I pulled out a photograph from the box. Black and white, faded, grandmother in uniform, standing next to 2 men in military dress. That's Admiral Chester Nimitz. I pointed to one man, and that's Alan Turing. I pointed to the other. The courtroom went silent. My grandmother worked with Alan Turing on code-breaking operations in 1943. She was one of 12 women assigned to the Pacific Theater Intelligence Unit. Operation Silent Bell was responsible for decrypting Japanese naval communications that led to the Battle of Midway victory. I set the photo on the bench. She saved thousands of American lives. She was brilliant, and she remained brilliant until the day she died. Judge Hastings picked up the photo, studied it carefully. The dementia diagnosis, I continued. It came from a general practitioner my uncle took her to, a doctor she'd never seen before. The visit happened 3 days after she told Uncle Marcus she was leaving everything to me. That's a lie, Marcus shouted. Is it? I pulled out my phone, pulled up a screenshot. This is the medical appointment record, November 14, 2021. First visit, diagnosis of moderate dementia after a 15-minute consultation. I pulled up another document. This is grandmother's regular doctor, Dr. Sarah Kim, who she'd seen for 20 years. Her notes from 1 week earlier show patient is cognitively intact. Memory excellent. Still solving crossword puzzles in pen. Janet was staring at me. I hadn't told her about any of this. Your Honor, I said, my uncle took my grandmother to a new doctor specifically to get a dementia diagnosis. That diagnosis was used to justify a conservatorship petition, which Felden is now being used to contest her will. Judge Hastings looked at Caldwell. Counselor, did you know about this doctor shopping? Caldwell looked at Marcus. Who wouldn't? Meet his eyes. I'll take that as a no. Judge Hastings picked up the Operation Silent Bell file. Ms. Patterson, how do I know these documents are authentic? Call the Department of Defense. Your Honor. Call the Naval Archives. Call Admiral David Morrison. He's retired, but he was grandmother S. last commanding officer before she retired from the reserves. His number is in the file. She was in the reserves until she was sick. You do UN get to serve in military intelligence reserves for 40 years if you re not sharp. Judge Hastings sat back in his chair, read through the documents again. The courtroom waited in silence. Finally, he spoke. Mr. Caldwell, I'm going to ask you directly. Did your client know about his mother's military intelligence background? Caldwell looked at Marcus. Mr. Patterson, Marcus stood slowly. I knew she was in the military, but she said she was a nurse. Did you ever ask her about it? She didn't like to talk about the war. Or, I said, she couldn't talk about it because it was classified, and you never cared enough to ask questions. That's not fair. What's not fair is you claiming she had dementia so you could steal her estate, an estate she carefully planned to leave to me because I was the only one who visited her, the only one who cared. You manipulated her. I spent time with her. I listened to her stories. After the operation was declassified in 2015, she finally got to tell someone what she'd really done in the war. She told me everything. The codes, the operations, the lives they saved. And when she finally got to share her truth, you know what you said? I turned to face him fully. You said she was confused. You said she was making things up. You told her the war was over and she needed to stop living in the past. Marcus's face went pale, but she wasn't confused. She was a war hero. She was brilliant, and she wanted someone to finally know the truth. I turned back to Judge Hastings. That's why she left everything to me. Not because I manipulated her, because I was the only one who saw her for who she really was. Judge Hastings called a recess. 2 hours. Janet and I sat in a conference room while the judge reviewed documents. Why didn't you tell me about this? Se askit. Grandmother made me promise. She said only show it if we were losing, if the judge was about to rule against us. We were losing, I know. This changes everything. I hope so. 2 hours later, Judge Hastings looked different. Less skeptical, more thoughtful. I've spent the recess on the phone with the Department of Defense, the Naval Archives, and Admiral David Morrison. I've verified the authenticity of these documents. He paused. Mrs. Margaret Patterson was, in fact, a decorated intelligence analyst who worked on classified code-breaking operations during World War II. She maintained top-secret clearance until 3.5 years ago. Her last psychological evaluation required for that clearance showed no cognitive decline whatsoever. Uncle Marcus was staring at the table. Furthermore, Judge Hastings continued, I've reviewed the timeline of her medical care. The dementia diagnosis cited by the plaintiff came from a single visit to a doctor Mrs. Patterson had never seen before. That visit occurred 3 days after she informed her son of her testamentary intentions. Her regular physician of 20 years shows no evidence of cognitive decline in the same time period. He looked at Uncle Marcus. Mr. Patterson, I find your contest of this will to be without merit. Your mother was clearly of sound mind when she executed her testamentary documents. The evidence suggests you sought out a diagnosis that would support your preferred outcome rather than accepting your mother's clearly stated wishes. Your Honor, Caldwell started. I'm not finished. I'm dismissing this contest with prejudice. The will stands as written. Furthermore, I'm awarding costs and attorney fees to the defendant. Your client will pay for Ms. Patterson's legal defense. Marcus shot to his feet. You can't. I can. And I have. Your mother served her country with distinction. She saved lives. She kept secrets for 70 years because she was ordered to, and when she finally got to tell her truth, you called her confused. Judge Hastings's voice was hard. She wasn't confused. She was a hero, and she had every right to leave her estate to the one person who recognized that. The gavel came down. We're adjourned. In the hallway, Uncle Marcus tried to approach me. Janet stepped between us. My client has nothing to say to you. She was my mother, and she left you nothing. That was her choice, a choice she made with full mental capacity while maintaining government security clearance. I don't understand why. Because you never listened, I said quietly. For 10 years, she tried to tell you about her real service, about what she'd done, and you told her she was living in the past. I thought she was confused. No, you thought she was convenient. You visited twice a year. You called on her birthday. You never asked about her life, her work, her legacy. And you did, every week. For 10 years, I drove 3 hours every Sunday to have lunch with her. I listened to her stories. I helped her organize her papers after the I was there! For the money. For her, the money was never the point. He looked at me for a long moment. She really worked with Alan Turing. She was one of the best codebreakers in the Pacific Theater. She broke the encryption on Japanese supply ship communications. Her work helped cut off their naval supply lines. I didn't know, because you never asked. He walked away. 3 weeks later, I received a package from the Department of Defense. Inside was a letter on official letterhead. Dear Ms. Patterson, following the recent legal proceedings regarding your grandmother's estate, we became aware that Mrs. Margaret Patterson's service has never been publicly recognized. With the declassification of Operation Silent Bell, we would like to correct this oversight. We are pleased to inform you that Mrs. Patterson has been posthumously awarded the Defense Distinguished Service Medal for her extraordinary contributions to the war effort. Adityonaji, her name will be added to the National Cryptologic Museum's Wall of Honor. A ceremony will be held at the Pentagon on November 8th. We hope you will attend to accept these honors on her behalf. Respectfully, Secretary of Defense. I sat in my grandmother's house. My house. Nwand cried. Not sad tears. Proud tears. She'd kept secrets for 70 years. She'd been brilliant and brave and absolutely essential to the war effort. And finally, she was getting recognition. The ceremony was beautiful. 200 people attended. Military brass, intelligence community members, historians, and family. Uncle Marcus came, sat in the back. I'd sent him an invitation. He'd earned that much. A 4-star general presented the medal, read citations describing grandmother's work, the codes she'd broken, the lives she'd saved. Margaret Patterson represents the best of American service, he said. She worked in shadows, without recognition, for years. She kept secrets that saved thousands of lives, and she did it all with extraordinary skill and unwavering dedication. They unveiled her name on the Wall of Honor. Margaret Louise Patterson, Operation Silent Bell, 1942 to 1945. I accepted the medal on her behalf, shook hands with generals, and admirals. Listened to stories from intelligence officers who'd studied her techniques. She was a legend in the community, one cryptologist told me. Her methodology for pattern recognition is still taught at the NSA Training Center. I had no idea. Most people didn't. That's how she wanted it. But we knew. We've always known. After the ceremony, Uncle Marcus approached. That was, I didn't realize ... double quotes. No one did. That was the point. I'm sorry for the lawsuit, for not believing her. For all of it. I nodded. Okay. Okay. Is there any way ... Can we start over? I thought about it. About grandmother. About what she would want, maybe. Someday. But right now, I need space. I understand. He handed me an envelope. I'm dropping the appeal, and I'm paying your legal fees without argument. It's the least I can do. A walk to Hawaii. I opened the envelope, a check for $47,000. The full amount of Janet's fees. 6 months after the ceremony, I started the Margaret Patterson Foundation. Using a portion of the inheritance, I established a scholarship fund for women studying mathematics and cryptography. $100,000 per year to support the next generation of codebreakers. The applications poured in, young women who wanted to serve, who wanted to use their mathematical gifts to protect their country, who wanted to follow in grandmother's footsteps. I read every application personally. One stood out. My great-aunt told me about Margaret Patterson. The applicant wrote how she worked in silence for decades, how she saved lives without recognition, how she was brilliant and brave. I want to be like her. I want to serve in the shadows and make a difference. I approved the scholarship. 3 weeks later, I got a thank you note. Dear Ms. Patterson, thank you for this opportunity. Your grandmother is my hero. Not because she got recognition eventually, but because she served without expecting it. That's real dedication. I hope to make her proud. Sincerely, Maria Chun Chun. I looked up the application again. Maria Chun, granddaughter of Dr. Raymond Chun, the neurologist who'd testified against us. I called her Maria. This is Claire Patterson. I approved your scholarship. Señora Patterson. Thank you so much. I need to tell you something. Your grandfather testified in court that my grandmother had dementia. Silence. He was wrong. Provably wrong. But he testified anyway. I didn't know he was involved in your case. Does he know you applied for the scholarship? No. We don't talk much. He's angry. I'm going into intelligence work instead of medicine. Why are you telling me this? Because I wanted you to know I'm not my grandfather. I believe in your grandmother's legacy, and I promise I'll honor it. I smiled. Then the scholarship is yours. Use it well. I will. Thank you. A. 1 year after the trial, I sold grandmother's house. Not because I needed the money, because I couldn't maintain it alone, and it deserved to be lived in. A young family bought it. 2 kids, a dog, big dreams. They loved the garden. They loved the library. They promised to take care of it. I kept 1 room's worth of furniture. Grandmother's desk, her chair, her bookshelf, and the metal box. I set up the desk in my apartment, put the box on the corner where I could see it every day. Inside, 3 medals, now 4 with the Defense Distinguished Service Medal. The operation, Silent Bell documents, the photo with Turing and Nimitz. And one more thing I'd added. A letter I'd written to grandmother after the trial. Dear Grandma, you were right. The box changed everything. The judge saw the truth. The will stood. You won. But more than that, you finally got recognized. Your name is on the wall of honor. Your work is being taught. Your legacy is secure. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry you spent 70 years silent. But I'm so proud of you. Proud of what you did. Proud of who you were. Thank you for trusting me with your truth. Love. Claire. I folded it and placed it in the box with the other documents. Grandmother's story. Finally, complete. 2 years after the trial, Uncle Marcus called. Claire, it's Marcus. I hope it's okay I'm calling. It's fine. I've been doing some research about Mom, about Operation Silent Bell, about everything she did. And I found something. Letters she wrote during the war. They were in storage at the National Archives. Personal correspondence from 1943. What do they say? She wrote to her sister, my Aunt Helen, talked about the work in vague terms. About the codes. About feeling like she was making a difference. He paused. In one letter, she wrote, I hope someday I can tell my children what I really did here. Not the nursing story, but the truth. I hope they'll be proud. His voice cracked. I should have been proud. I should have listened. I should have believed her. Yes, I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Not because of the money. Because I failed her. I was quiet for a moment. She forgave you, you know. Before she died, she told me she understood why you didn't believe her. The story was incredible. She said she'd have doubted it too. She said that she did. She wasn't angry, just sad that she couldn't share it sooner. I miss her. Me too. Claire. Could we have coffee sometime? I'd like to hear the stories. The real stories. If you're willing to share them. I thought about grandmother, about forgiveness, about family. Yes, I'd like that. We met the following week. I brought the medal box. Opened it at the coffee shop table. This, I pointed to the first mail, is her commendation medal. She got it for breaking a critical code in June 1943. It led to intercepting a Japanese supply convoy. 12 ships. Thousands of tons of supplies that never reached their destination. Marcus stared at the medal. This one is her Defense Service Medal. For her overall contribution to the war effort. And this, he pointed to the third, that's the Legion of Merit. For exceptionally meritorious service. She got it in 1945 when the war ended. She never mentioned any of these because she was sworn to secrecy. The operation was classified. Everything about it was classified. I pulled out the photo with Turing. She met him in 1943. He was consulting on some of the Japanese naval codes. They worked together for 6 weeks. She worked with Alan Turing. Marcus shook his head. This is insane. She was extraordinary. Why didn't she tell me after it was declassified? She tried. You said she was confused. You said she was living in the past. You dismissed it. He flinched. I remember. She brought it up at Thanksgiving 2016. Said she had something important to share. Started talking about codes and the war, and I thought she was having an episode. She wasn't. She'd just been freed from 70 years of enforced silence and wanted to finally tell her truth. And I shut her down. Yes. He was quiet for a long time. How do I make this right? You can't. She's gone. But you can honor her memory. You can tell her story. You can make sure people know who she really was. How? I'm writing a book about her life, her service, Operation Silent Bell. I could use help. Someone who knew her in different ways. Someone who can tell the family side of the story. You want me to help write a book about her? I want you to help tell her truth. The whole truth. Not just the classified work, but the person she was. The mother, the grandmother, the woman who kept the biggest secret of her life because her country asked her to. Marcus nodded slowly. I'd be honored. The book took 3 years to write. Silent Bell, The Secret War of Margaret Pedersen, was published by a major house. Made the bestseller list in its second week. Reviews called it revelatory. Important. The hidden story of America's code-breaking heroes. We did interviews together. Marcus and I told her story. Showed the medals. Explained the sacrifice. She was brilliant. Marcus said in one interview, and I'm ashamed it took me so long to see it. But you see it now? The interviewer said. Yes, thanks to my niece. She never gave up on Mom's legacy, even when I was trying to destroy it. The interviewer turned to me. You fought for 6 months in court. You could have settled, taken half, walked away. Why didn't you? Because it wasn't about the money. It was about honoring her wishes, respecting her choices, proving she was exactly who she said she was. And the medal box? That was the turning point. It was her final gift. She knew someone might challenge the will. She knew her Secret Service might seem unbelievable. So, she kept the proof, and she told me when to use it. She planned for this. She planned for everything. That's who she was. Strategic, thorough, brilliant. Do you think she knew there would be a lawsuit? I think she knew Marcus didn't believe her. I think she knew he'd struggle with the will, and I think she wanted to make sure the truth came out, no matter what. 5 years after the trial, the movie rights sold. A major studio. Big budget. They wanted to tell grandmother's story properly. Marcus and I consulted on the script. Made sure they got it right. The accuracy. The humanity. The sacrifice. She wasn't a superhero, I told the screenwriter. She was a woman who did extraordinary things in ordinary circumstances. Don't make her larger than life. Make her real. The movie premiered 2 years later. We walked the red carpet together. Marcus and I, the reunited family. The healed wounds. Reporters asked about the lawsuit. It was the worst thing I ever did, Marcus said simply. I'm grateful Claire fought me. I'm grateful she proved me wrong. It made me see who my mother really was. And now I get to spend the rest of my life making sure people know her story. That's not repayment. You can't repay this, but it's something. The movie was nominated for 6 Academy Awards. 2. Best Actress for the woman who played grandmother. Best Adapted Screenplay. At the Oscar ceremony, the actress thanked us. Claire and Marcus Patterson shared their grandmother's story with honesty and love. Margaret Patterson was a hero, not the kind who gets parades, but the kind who serves in silence and saves lives. Thank you for letting me tell her story. I cried. Marcus cried. We held hands in the audience. 10 years after grandmother's death, her story was finally fully told. I still have the medal box. It sits on my desk. I open it sometimes, when I need to remember. Remember that truth matters. That service matters. That standing up for what's right matters. Inside, the 4 medals. The documents, tie foros. And 1 new addition. A letter from the first Margaret Patterson Scholar to graduate from MIT. Dear Ms. Patterson, I wanted you to know I graduated top of my class. I've been recruited by the NSA. I'm going to serve, just like your grandmother did. Thank you for making this possible. Thank you for fighting for her legacy. Thank you for inspiring people like me to serve in silence and make a difference. Your grandmother would be proud. Respectfully, Maria Chunai. Set the letter in the box with the other treasures. Grandmother's legacy, living on, growing, inspiring. Uncle Marcus had demanded millions. Judge Hastings had called me delusional, but I'd produced the documents. Operation Silent Bell. And everything changed. Not just for me. For everyone who heard the story. Everyone who learned that heroes don't always get recognition. Sometimes they serve in silence for 70 years. Sometimes they keep secrets that save thousands of lives. Sometimes they're called delusional for telling the truth. But the truth comes out eventually. It always does. I closed the metal box and smiled. We did it, Grandma, I whispered to the empty room. We told your story. We protected your legacy. We proved them all wrong. In the silence, I could almost hear her voice. Proud, relieved, at peace. I knew you would, sweetheart. I always knew. And that was worth more than $4.7 million. That was worth everything.